This isn't a video that I wanted to have to make, but looking at the stats, I think it's about time. Since the release of the Master Chief Collection back on December 5th, we've gone from having almost 100,000 concurrent players and great numbers on Twitch to barely scraping above 5,000 concurrent players and atrocious Twitch numbers. And sadly, this is a derailed train that shows no signs of stopping. So, what went wrong with Halo Reach PC? Well, a lot of things. But first, let's get the super obvious one out of the way, and that is that 343 once again released an unfinished game. And in this particular case, they managed to re-release a 9-year-old game with less content than the game had when it launched 9 years ago. Now you tell me what went through their heads there. Now I understand that getting Forge and Theater to work was a struggle, and technically you are able to mod it into the game currently. But if we're real, most people aren't going to mess with that. They'll just launch up the game, notice the features lacking, and go, well that sucks. And the saddest part about all this is that we've already had this exact same thing happen with Halo 5. And somehow, we're still making the same mistakes. Just the same ones over and over and over, and as a Halo fan, it just sucks to see. I love the Halo franchise, and I don't even think that 343 necessarily makes bad games like some people do. But watching my favorite franchise flounder like this just gets depressing. So now that the obvious fault is out of the way, let's get into some more subjective topics that everyone may not agree with. Alright, number one, we have the shoddy port of Halo Reach. Now for the most part, Halo Reach on PC does run pretty well. It gets pretty good frame rates and it's pretty easy to run on your computer, so it's decently optimized. But there's a couple of main issues related to the port that while 343 has kind of mentioned they're taking a look at, they haven't actually fixed, and we're now well over a month into the release of the game. So what I'm talking about now is aiming with your mouse versus a controller. Now I know people go back and forth on whether aim assist is too strong and all that jazz. I'm not going to get into it, but I'm just going to say if you have a PC game where this many people complain that playing with a mouse does not feel good, you got to do something about that. I mean, it's a game that you're putting out on computer. Most computer players aren't going to want to plug in a controller unless they're coming from a console and that's how they've always played Halo. But when you're trying to attract in new players, most of those new players are going to want to play with a mouse. All my friends that I tried to get into Halo Reach that are more competitive players played Halo Reach with a mouse and just kind of gave up. And that isn't saying that necessarily it's just because of the mouse. There's a whole bunch of other issues that Halo Reach has, but it's just one more issue piling on top of all the other issues that isn't helping. So along with that mouse versus controller issue, we also have that we're still unable to crouch as a mouse and keyboard player. Now I do understand this is how the crouch feature worked in the original version of Halo Reach, and actually is how crouch worked all the way up until Halo 4. Basically, if you're not aware, the way it works in the console versions of the game, or this version right now, is that when you're moving at full momentum, you are unable to crouch. But if you let off your analog stick a little bit to move at, say, 80% speed or 75% speed, then you're able to push down on the analog stick and crouch while still moving. Now, that works pretty fluidly with a controller, although like I said, they have changed that in the modern Halos, so now you can just crouch whenever. But on a mouse and keyboard, we only have one movement speed, and that's full speed. So if you're using your movement inputs at all, you're completely unable to crouch. So that leads to really awkward gameplay, where if you want to crouch mid-fight, or you want to crouch while walking or something, you have to let go of all your inputs, stop moving, hit the crouch button, and then you're able to move again. And that's just something that should have been caught in testing. We shouldn't have to complain about the feature for almost 2 months before getting it fixed. And it's just little things like that that just add up over time. So the next issue with the game is the Grindy unlock system. So if you've played Halo Reach at all, you know that they completely redid the unlock system for the Master Chief Collection. In Halo Reach originally, you had the credit system where you played games, you earned credits, and then as you leveled up, you could use those credits to buy different armor pieces. That in itself was a flawed system, but people liked it because it gave you the freedom to buy what you wanted instead of having to grind through all the levels. Where now we have your basic battle pass type unlock system where just every level you unlock a specific armor set or whatever you would unlock at that level, and you go all the way from tier 1 to 100. If I'm honest with you, this to me isn't a huge deal, but it is pretty grindy. And what I don't understand is if you're going to go with the Battle Pass model, why are there no daily or weekly challenges related to multiplayer games, firefight, campaign? I honestly haven't even launched up a firefight game because I have no reason to. You can't get experience from it and there's no challenges. So unless you really like firefight, you're not even going to open it up. Whereas if there was a challenge to do something in firefight, I probably would have launched it up by now, and maybe that would have kept the game more fresh for me and other players. And what's really weird is that Halo Reach on Xbox 360 toward the end had challenges. So it's just another form of content that got ripped out of the game before they ported it to PC. And I just don't understand how that happened so many times. So the next is the third issue, and that's sound issues. I'm not going to claim to know a ton about this one. I know a lot of people have issues with the way the sound works in Halo Reach, the Master Chief Collection version. This isn't PC specific, and it just had to do with how they ported it to the Master Chief Collection. It's not something I've really noticed, but I know it does actually bother people, so it's something I wanted to bring up. So number 4 is maps. And what I mean by this isn't necessarily that the maps of Halo Reach are bad, even though some of them are. My issues with the map system in Halo Reach is that there's really bad weighting in some of the playlists, and you keep getting bad maps, or a lot of the playlists really emphasize DLC maps, and I just don't always want to play those. And there's also the issue that in playlists like Hardcore, they kept maps in there for way too long. As of writing the script on the 22nd, they actually put out a tweet that they took Penance out of Hardcore. But that's another thing where it took over a month and a half to remove a map that everyone hated. And I think one way to alleviate some of the issues with the bad map weighting or just the map system in general would have been to do like a Halo 3 veto system, but we don't have that. You just load in and you have to play with whatever map it gives you. So if it's a bad map, then you have to play the bad map, and then everyone complains about it. So I think they could have handled it better either with no weighting or different weighting of the maps, or just having that veto system in there so that players could veto out maps they don't want to play. So the next issue is number 5, and that's the lack of rank diversity. When the game rolled out, we literally had 2 ranked playlists. Invasion, which I don't care how many times someone tells me it is not a competitive playlist, and then Hardcore, which obviously is the competitive playlist. It has like the MLG settings and everything. But what I never understood is why was there no doubles, why is there no free-for-all, why was there no ranked Team Slayer on launch, even though we just got that. And it's stuff like that. It makes the game get stale when basically the only way you can play 4v4 ranked is to play Hardcore. And I know if you're playing the Master Chief Collection on Xbox, Halo Reach also only has 2 or 3 ranked playlists. But in that case, it makes a lot more sense because you have all the ranked playlists from the other games in that one too. You have like Halo CE doubles, or the multiple Halo 3 ranked playlists, or I think there's base Halo 2 ranked playlists. You have all of those to pick from, whereas on PC, we only had the 2 and then now 3 Halo Reach ranked playlists. They should have rolled out with 4 or 5, you know? Hardcore, Team Doubles, Free-for-all, Ranked Team Slayer, and then Invasion, or whatever else you want, but there should have been 5 or 6 playlists instead of just the 2 that we launched with. So the next issue is number 6, and this is one that I actually don't really have any solutions for. And it's just the settings issues that Reach has. Nobody in the community is unified on what settings we actually want to play in Halo Reach. The competitive community wants to play the hardcore settings, no bloom, no sprint, and that's fine. I think those play really well for competitive, but the casual side of the game is all over the place. Some people like the TU settings with reduced blooms, some don't. Some people hate bleed through, some don't. Some people really want AR starts instead of DMR starts, and it's stuff like this that has just led to almost nobody being happy. Players that want to play no bloom in social can't because there's no playlist for that, but people who want to play with vanilla Reach settings can only do that in Invasion. So it's kind of all over the place what settings they use based on the playlist, and like I said, I don't really have a solution they could have done for this one, but it definitely is an issue that has plagued the game, is that these settings are all over the place and nobody's really happy with any of them. Should they have left the game like Bungie had designed it? I don't know. I mean, Vanilla Reach has a ton of issues, so I don't necessarily like that, but TU definitely has its own issues, and Hardcore has its own issues. So it's really hard to say what settings they should have gone with, and really I don't think there's a world where they could have unified all of them, but I think it's that lack of unity that caused issues in the community. The next issue I want to talk about is just a super quick one, and that's number 7, is that there's no crossplay. Obviously that's really basic. In Halo Reach we don't have any form of crossplay between PC and Xbox, and I think that's something that releasing a AAA modern game, it just should be in your game. And it's disappointing that it's not yet, and who knows if it even will get added. It would reduce queue times, let you play with your friends that are playing on Xbox, and all that jazz. So it's really something that I hope that they implement on launch for Infinite, but we'll just have to wait and see what they do. And the last issue I want to talk about is just the fact that Halo Reach is a 9-year-old game. This is a game that was divisive in its time, and now is getting re-released and is still divisive. If you didn't love Halo Reach 9 years ago, you're definitely not going to love it 9 years later when you could play all sorts of other games instead. And so I think a lot of the issues actually stem from the fact that people decided to check out Halo on PC because Halo finally came back to PC. And then once they got in, whether it's one of the reasons that I've listed or just the fact that they don't like Halo Reach, they've quickly fallen off the game. And this is kind of where I hope that maybe as Halo 2 and 3 roll out, that we can hold some of those players a little bit better than Halo Reach has, but honestly I don't know if it will. There are probably many other reasons that Reach has been bleeding players beyond the ones I've talked about in this video, so if you have any other opinions other than the ones that I mentioned, or you agree or disagree on some of my points, I would love to read that in the comments. Like I mentioned, I do hope and believe to a certain extent that the Master Chief Collection will get some form of resurgence as the other games, specifically Halo 2 and 3, roll out, but I do really worry that the damage Reach has caused could cause these players to not return at all. And this actually directly relates to a video I did a long time ago about why I thought the staggered release would be bad for the Master Chief Collection, so I'll stick the link to that video in the corner if you want to check out my full thoughts. But the gist of it was that staggering out these games, you're setting yourself up to failure when you're leading with Halo Reach, which is one of the weaker ones in the Halo franchise. And I know some people do love Reach, but if you just take a step back and look at it, Halo Reach was very, very divisive. And going with a more widely loved game like 3 or 2, if you were going to stagger them out, starting with your strongest games first probably would have made more sense. But then I know that messes up the whole release schedule of going Reach, CE, blah blah blah. But that's why I think they should have just waited until they were all ready. Then you get into release windows and all that jazz. So I don't know, but check that video out if you want to. Anyways, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it, or at least found it somewhat thought-provoking or informative, because it does really sadden me to be talking about this. I really wanted Halo Reach to succeed on PC, and I still think Halo can succeed going forward. We just need 343 to do better. A ton rides on Infinite later this year, or whenever it ends up coming out if it gets delayed, so here's to hoping that they hit it out of the park. And just to be clear, I don't plan to stop playing Reach or making content on it going forward. This was just a video I felt I should make. So I'm going to stick my socials like my Twitch and others in the description, so feel free to drop by, and I'll see you guys next time.